Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to a special review for the brand new Journey Freedom album. This one just came out on July 8th of 2022. It is their 15th studio album and first new music in over a decade. I can't believe we are finally here. We're finally getting it. I'm going to dive into this in just a bit here, but before we do, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. Of course, I would greatly appreciate it. And as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with a review for the brand new Journey album, Freedom. So I want to give you guys a little bit of background here on the band. They formed in 1973, which means they've now been around 49 years, if you can believe that. And they formed from former members of Santana and were built around guitarist Neil Schon. Now, he's still the driving force of the band today. He's the sole original member in the group, and they've gone through many different incarnations. In fact, originally they were a jazz fusion band and recorded 3 albums that way before sort of finding their footing. Then they added Steve Perry as a vocalist to the band and switched to an A&R sort of melodic rock styling of things and kicking off their biggest era. And in 1981, they released their biggest album, Escape, which featured some monumental classic rock hits on it that most people know out there, even if they don't know the names of these songs. Don't Stop Believin', Open Arms, Who's Crying Now was another one off of that, all helping the album itself to go on to sell 10 million copies just in the US alone. So I mean, big things happening for the band. They go on to make 2 more albums, but in 1987 they decided to go their separate ways. And so eventually reuniting in 1996 for one album, Trial by Fire. However, at this point, Steve Perry didn't want to tour. And so unfortunately the band had to move on at that point, and they went through a succession of singers and a few different albums and things until ultimately landing on Arnel Pineda in 2007. Now, since that time, they've recorded 3 studio albums, including this brand new one, Freedom, which we're going to talk about right now. So 15th studio album, as I mentioned, 11 years since the last album, Eclipse, in 2011. 15 tracks on this, 70 minutes long. So, you know, for having to wait as long as we did, at least they have packed this thing full. If you get the Japanese edition, you get 1 additional track on it. But the first thing that I notice on this album is that it doesn't really sound like any of their other albums. There's a lot of modern influences on this thing. And I would say, you know, perhaps it's due to the fact that nearly all of the songs on here are co-written by the former new drummer, Narada Michael Walden, on here. He plays on the album, he produces on the album, but he left before its release. It also could be the fact that they've hired a second keyboard player on here, Jason Derlotka. And I don't know if it's him who's bringing this to this, if it was, you know, Narada Michael Walden doing this in production or what it was, but there's a lot of that here. Now, I look at it and I sort of say, this sounds like a band that is still growing and exploring, and I kind of try to take it for that. I think it's a good thing. After nearly 50 years together, the band is trying some new stuff. And if that makes it interesting for them and makes it so that they want to record, more power to them, because we've waited 11 years here to get something, and so I'm guessing they didn't want to just rehash things. And so albums of the past 20 years, that's exactly what was happening in my opinion. Since Arrival, which came out in 2000, the band pretty much relied on its original formula and rarely would venture into new territory with what they were doing, with, I would say, maybe the small exception of Generation in 2005, where each member of the band took lead vocals on it, but the music still was pretty much, you know, a clone of stuff they had done in the past. And I'm not saying anything negative against these albums. I love those albums, but that's just the way that that stuff was. And another thing, you know, while it has been over a decade since we've heard vocalist Arnel Pineda, you know, being recorded, he sounds very different on this album, in my opinion. Maybe he's just coming into his own and they're not requiring him to continue to sing in the Steve Perry way, per se. They're letting him be a little bit more of his own. I'm not exactly sure. But, you know, there's some points on here where I wasn't even sure if it was him singing, although I have found out that Light Generation, they've allowed returning drummer Dean Castronovo, who's coming back into the band, so that's pretty cool. He sings lead on one of the songs here called Afterglow. It's a really good song. I'll talk about it in a little bit here. But you know what? There's part of me that misses that classic Journey sound on here, and it's not really on here. It's not throughout the album, but there are moments on here where it rears its head. For the most part, though, it's a very sort of fresh, unique take on their legacy and the sound that they created and so forth. All the members on here sound in fine form, especially, of course, guitar talents of Neil Schon, who doesn't disappoint, by the way. I love his playing on this and flourishes and little lead bits and stuff like that that he does. My only one complaint on here, though, is that I feel like I don't really hear keyboardist Jonathan Cain, at least not in the classic sense. He is on here, he certainly, but the keyboards is where I really hear most of the change on this album. And so maybe it's him too that's pulling from this, that's helping to create, you know, this more new, unique take on things. But, you know, it's not to say that this album isn't good. It's just new and different on here. What I will say, though, is that it's interesting. It holds my attention all the way through on it. It rocks more than some of the past albums, and while, you know, it does that, there are still those tender moments on here that the band, of course, has become really known for. So you're getting rockers, you're getting the balladry and stuff like that on it, all very good when it comes to a Journey album, things that are, you know, key stuff that we look for within these things. So let's talk about the songs that are on here. There's some real standout tracks, including the first track on here, Together We Run. Right out of the gate, though, this song announces that this album is going to be different, but it does retain a lot of classic elements from Journey that make the song really good. So I sort of feel like you're hearing something new, but it's also got those elements of that old friend that you like, you know, you can welcome into it. Track number 2, Don't Give Up on Us. So this one here was released as a single, and for me it's the closest thing to their classic catalog. Could be a cousin to the hit song Separate Ways back in 1983. You know, and it makes for both something really good, but also sort of calls into question why they would replicate such a big song. It really stands out on this album, in my opinion. The rest of them all kind of veer off into something new and are a little hard to pinpoint, maybe a connection back to something. But this one here, definitely doing that, building on that classic, you know, riff or whatever that is the Separate Ways World Apart song. Track number 7, Come Away With Me. This one here is a nice hard rocker. It's got a really great groove in it, and it's positioned in the middle of the album, kind of right where you need it, keeping the flow throughout this album. Track number 8, Afterglow. So I was telling you about this one earlier. It's sung by Dean Castronovo, and of all the songs on here, this one here is kind of closest to their previous hit Ballads, making it interesting that Dean sings it instead of Arneal, and sort of wondering why that would be the case. But Dean's voice is perfect for this song, and I think he's actually a perfect fit for vocalist of Journey, and I kind of always wondered why they didn't select Dean to sing lead before they found Arneal. So no real answers on that. He has sung lead in the past and certainly does a great job. And if you've never listened, he's got some you know, albums out there and stuff that he's done that he sings lead. So definitely worth checking out on that. Track 12, Don't Go. This one here is a nice big upbeat rocker. Really helps to elevate the overall feel of the album itself, and it brings a nice big peak right towards the end of this. And you've got 3 more tracks after that to 15, but you know, the album doesn't fall off, in my opinion. The album, you know, has nice peaks and valleys and things of that nature in it. So let's look at this, because it is a beautiful album. Look at that right there. The artwork on it, very simple, but classic. There's the backside with all the tracks on it. Let's just open that up. You can see the whole thing. And then the inside of this, right? So we've actually got to spin that around. Almost. There we go. Look at that. It's beautiful. I did find it interesting that they put the 3 key members here. The rest of the guys are newer guys and so forth. Look at the underside of that. Nice bit of art there. Booklet is in this part. Let me pull it out because it's a great booklet. Now, here's the thing. This is the cover of the booklet. Here's the one we get. I actually really like this one and would have liked that one as the cover, but you know, it is what it is. You open it up, we get lyrics and information and stuff like that, which you would expect. But there's a lot of great photos in here, and they're jamming live on this stuff. So it looks good. Each member on here, big full page photo, so forth. And then we get in the back and we got the lyrics, and they're about the tiniest lyrics I've ever seen in my life, kind of saying that that doesn't really matter in most cases to things. It's all the other stuff. That's what that always tells me. But, you know, whatever. I guess you can use a magnifying glass. So bottom line on this thing, biggest thing about this album is the differences in it, you know, but with new members come new influences, and I sort of look at it that way. And after 49 years of the band being together, you know, why repeat something here? So this one here, you know, it's good seeing a classic band like Journey not resting on its past glories, trying something new, exploring new territory. I mean, that's kind of what this cover tells me. It's like, you know, the West, and they're out there exploring and so forth. But I hope that this album is like a new sort of resurgence for the band. We don't have to wait another decade for an album or so forth, but if they're trying some new stuff and this excites them, then maybe we will continue with this and it won't be so long between albums. But, you know, if it is, this is a great album to tide you over in the meantime. So certainly check it out, see what you think of this thing. And there you go, that is the Journey Freedom review. Related videos, I've done one of their box set, Time Cubed or Time 3, depending upon how you want to say it. I've also done a review of a Japanese compilation simply called Ballads, something a little different there. I'm going to leave links to those in the description if you want to check that out. And certainly if you've enjoyed the video, consider sharing it out on social media. Help spread the word both for my channel, but also for Journey. I know they would appreciate it. So would I. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.